Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Innovation Entrepreneurship Tackling Climate Change webinar. On today's session, I will be focusing on innovation and climate change. How can innovation combat climate change? Then a technological innovation, the role that technology plays on coming up with new ideas, new technologies to tackle climate change. Then the role of entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial ideas in combating climate change, sustainability and impact on climate change. I will share some of the success stories of successful entrepreneurial stories tackling climate change. And then lastly, I will focus on the case of Kosovo. What are some of the initiatives and strategies at the national level, and basically some of the recommendations. When it comes to climate change, has grabbed the attention across the nation, and its impact of greater intensity is being observed more and more frequently, basically since it's threatening the prospects of sustainable development. The only way to respond to climate change, it is believed that innovation plays a key role, and innovation for its part can refer to something new or to a change made to an existing product, idea, or field. Moreover, innovation, it is already part of the Sustainable Development Goals. It is mentioned under several SDGs, particularly Goal 7, which is affordable and clean energy, Goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth, and Goal 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. There are many initiatives and agreements that have been undertaken across nations. So the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development both set out the vision of low carbon, climate resilient and sustainable, let's say, future for all. Under this agreement, basically countries have developed different strategies. They have determined contributions to the global response to climate change, national adaptation plans, and also mid-century strategies. It is also worth mentioning that technology innovation is seen as a key catalyst in the efforts to implement national climate actions and to fulfill and realize the above mentioned vision. Fostering innovation, basically, as I already said, it's one of the post-2020 SDGs, and is supportive of achieving other sustainable development goals, such as ending poverty and hunger, ensuring access to energy and health, and basically to find solutions for fighting climate change and adapting to its effects. So effective response to climate change does require clean innovation on a global scale, which is i.e. the development and the diffusion of a broad variety of new clean technologies in both developed and the developing countries. So what is requested is that to invest in innovation and to deploy the latest technologies in order to somehow remove the climate pollution from the atmosphere and to achieve this net zero carbon future. So climate change, it is one of our greatest challenges of our times. And basically in the last 150 years, the concentration of the greenhouse gases basically in the atmosphere is skyrocketed. In particularly, we have the carbon dioxide, methane, and the nitrous oxide. However, the environmental problems mostly require joint actions to find an effective solution. So basically, the gases that I just mentioned accelerate into the climate because they trap the heat in the atmosphere, producing an increase in the Earth's average temperature. So as a result, basically, we need sufficiently restrictive regulatory policies are needed to limit the emission and basically to promote the technological innovation. So when it comes to innovation, it is well known that it does fuel economic competitiveness. It creates jobs. It helps ensure that technology and manufacturing enterprises continue to contribute to the social and economic by providing social and economic value to the global economy as a whole. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was established as a result of a global commitment by countries to cooperate together to find solutions on how they can limit the average temperatures that have been increased. We have 192 nations that have adopted the UN Framework Convention goal on greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at a level that could prevent dangerous interferences with the climate system. So basically, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change embraced and supported, let's say, developments of positive technology, enabling, let's say, environments where is innovation-focused governments and market policies and regulation, and as well as it requested more active and engaged role of businesses and communities at large. According to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, there is a broad understanding that clean technology innovation is key to addressing the global challenge on climate change. So the clean technology would fall under two categories according to UN. So we have mitigation and adaptation. However, innovation, on the other hand, it is made up of two dimensions. We have technology development and technology diffusion. With technology development, we refer to the use of scientific knowledge and research to obtain solutions to the climate issues. However, with technology, let's say, diffusion, is the process by which new technologies are transmitted from one party to another. Countries and nations find different ways on how to basically transfer and share technologies through, let's say, commercial, let's say, partnerships, collaborative innovation frameworks, bilateral and regional government to government, or private sector technology and innovation partnerships. Mentioned earlier, clean technologies fall into two categories, mitigation and adaptation. Basically, climate change mitigation is defined as a human intervention to reduce the source or enhance the sinks of greenhouse gases. Basically, it reduces the flow of heat trapping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, whereas adapting to a climate change means the ecological and psychological change that takes place on the planet and the resulting of social and health consequences to those changes that we unfortunately we must adapt. There wouldn't be a unique solution or a pathway to achieving large reductions of the greenhouse gas emissions. However, different models, let's say, give different solutions based on different assumptions about the future availability and cost of alternative technologies and other factors. So 85% of the world's energy is provided by fossil fuels. The carbon dioxide basically released from the combustion of fuels, primarily from the power plants and automobiles, is the key source of the GIG's, let's say, emissions. Technology, let's say technological change on a massive scale is needed in order to achieve large reductions on the global greenhouse gas emissions. There are four general strategies recommended out there, such as reduce the demands for energy in all major sectors of the economy, building, transportation, industry, improve the efficiency of energy utilization, replace high carbon fossil fuels such as coal and oil, and capture the sequester of carbon dioxide emitted by the combustion of fossil fuels to prevent its release to the atmosphere. When it comes to the importance of technological innovation, so in any successful strategy, in order for you to reduce the greenhouse emissions significantly, it does require actions not only to deploy these low emission technologies that are available today, but also to find ways in creating innovation on new technologies that might be needed. The general process of technological change can be characterized as involving a number of steps and stages. The first one would be, let's say, invention, which is discovery, the creation of new knowledge or new prototypes. We have innovation, which is creation of new and improved commercial products or processes. Then we would have a stage of adaptation, such as initial deployment and use of new technology. And then we have diffusion, which is a widespread adaptation of the use of this technology. In each stage of the process that I just mentioned, which require different types of incentives to promote the overall goal of technological change. However, there has been a growing interest in recent years on ways on how to foster such innovation, in particular, the role that governments basically can and should play in this particular process. So the need for new technologies basically is that we need technologies that can enable devices such as vehicles, machinery, and appliances that use energy more efficiently. Then we would need technologies that create and utilize alternative energy carriers and chemicals that emit less greenhouse gases, and also technologies that create alternative ways of providing goods and services that are less greenhouse gas intensive. As mentioned earlier, I said that the government role is quite critical in creating or enhancing markets for greenhouse emission reducing technologies. And thus, there are two categories when it comes to policy options. We have voluntary measures that are often called technology policy options. They provide incentives, let's say, to various types to encourage certain actions or technology development. And the other one are mandatory requirements, which it's self-explanatory, which means consists of government actions that impose requirements or limitations on specific activities, facilities, technologies, and they usually come as regulations or, let's say, as standards. What is important to mention that when it comes to technological innovation, especially in the ones for achieving climate change goals, it requires not only a set of policy drivers, but also we need finances, infusion of finances, and also we need human resources to support each stage of the technological change process. Financial support must go for R&D, for research and development, and for people with the requisites of training, skills, and creativity to innovate. Also, the private sector can play a major role in the technology innovation if climate change problems are to be dealt successfully. We have two cases here, the case of China and the US when it comes to R&D and financial support and R&D. So in recent years, for example, China, which is now the largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, has embarked on a major expansion of investment in green energy technologies. And basically, it has propelled to become the world's leading manufacturer of photovoltaic solar cells, as well as dominant force in the power system. In contrast, the national government funding energy for energy R&D in the United States has declined sharply in the last 3 decades. Which the U.S. expenditure for energy R&D remains much lower than any other key areas of science and technology, such as space and health. Also, compared to many other industrialized countries, basically the US also spends substantially less on energy R&D as a fraction of gross domestic product, which shows that climate change, maybe energy saving is not a priority for the country. Now let's see on how, let's say, entrepreneurs can support. Entrepreneurship can support on combating climate change. There are many ways in which entrepreneurs can make a significant contribution to the global response of climate change. Basically, an entrepreneur is someone who can transform an idea into a product that is of a practical use, especially in the field of technology. This generally means that entrepreneurs take an invention and turn it into a technology that benefits and it is used by the society. However, the scope of the entrepreneurial activities is much wider. An entrepreneur may devise and implement a new business model that uses existing technologies in innovative way. There are many ways. So as I said, entrepreneurs can be a powerful force against climate change, and mainly they can do this by bringing ideas into practice. Governments cannot alone take on the challenge on fighting climate change, and their ability is restricted. Governments can, let's say, bring stricter regulation, introduce incentives with regard to environmental sustainability, but it's the businesses, if they cooperate, it can make mitigating climate change much easier. When it comes to the inventions such as solar energy, wind power, electric cars, remote working tools, it is the entrepreneurs who can bring these into reality. Bring innovation to fight against climate change. So, let's say startups are best positioned to innovate because they are smaller and have an open culture, unlike governments and large corporations, which require time to approve new initiatives. Then entrepreneurs can fulfill customer demand. There is an increasing consumer demand for environmental sustainable products, which I believe it will grow in the future. Then you can create a demand for sustainability. Entrepreneurs are in a good position to demand sustainability from others. They can demand their supply chain to change. For example, Apple has made a commitment stating that its products and its supply chain will become 100% carbon neutral by 2030. And lastly, entrepreneurs can change habits and culture. I believe that they are in a position to change habits and culture thinking. Henry Ford was the driving force behind cars with combustion engine, but it took another entrepreneur such as Elon Musk basically to steer the automobile industry away from the combustion engine. At the time when the Elon Musk co-founded Tesla, the electric car was not really taken as seriously. And it was, let's say, an uphill battle against the established auto manufacturers. However, today, Tesla not only has the highest market car capitalization than any other auto manufacturer, but it has also caused a revolution in the auto industry. So their impact is practically huge. As much as they have a role in developing climate technologies, however, entrepreneurs do face challenges in undertaking successful innovations, basically because they have limited opportunity to engage in entrepreneurship. Then they lack of enabling environments to innovate solutions for addressing climate change, and limited support to, let's say, undertake climate innovation activities. So what can be some of the, let's say, ways to stop climate change that entrepreneurs can be aware of, and we can pressure governments and businesses to, let's say, keep fossil fuels in the ground, invest in renewable technologies, switch to sustainable transport, protect forests, protect oceans, and mainly reduce how people, let's say, consume, and also, quite importantly, to reduce, let's say, plastic. Imposing climate policies can also be more effective when consistently embedded with broader strategies designed to make national and regional development paths more sustainable. So climate change does influence key national and human living conditions, and thereby also the basis of social and economic, let's say, development. So the society's priorities on sustainable development, they would influence both the greenhouse gas emissions that are causing climate change and the vulnerability. In addition to this, basically, the UN Secretary General has also proposed a 6 climate positive actions, especially for those governments to take once they go about building back their economies and their societies. So one can be as green transition. These are investments that must accelerate the decarbonization of all aspects in the economy. Then you have green jobs and sustainable and inclusive growth. You have the green economy, and basically making societies and people resilient through a transition that is fair for all and leaves no one behind. Investments in sustainable solutions to confront all the climate risk, and what is more importantly is cooperation, that no country can succeed alone. Here I've just highlighted some of the success stories, climate entrepreneurial success stories. The first one is Gloria Zare Adu from Ghana. She's the, let's say, the founder and the owner of Global Bamboo Products Limited. She has developed an innovative way of turning bamboo into charcoal. This solution helps to preserve forests, cut emissions, and reduce the health risk associated with indoor fires. Then we have Arun Shenoy and Mandar Kaprekar from India. They are the founders and the executive directors of Green India Building Systems and Services. The two entrepreneurs developed an air conditioning system based on the geothermal heat exchange, which allows for energy saving for up to 60% and water saving up to 100% compared to conventional building cooling systems. Then we have Reyhan Jamalova, who is the founder and the inventor of the rain energy in Azerbaijan. The company has developed a smart generator which harvests energy from rain. Then we have Zia Imran, a chief executive officer of Zihan Machines in Pakistan. The company has developed a product which reduces household gas and electricity consumption through Internet of Things automation. And then we have Gator Haltman, which is Coral Vita from USA, a company that restores threatened reefs by growing resilient corals and transplanting them into a degraded sites. So these are some of the success stories of entrepreneurs on how they can support the climate change initiatives. So we have the case of Kosovo. Basically, the important drivers of Kosovo's economic growth, such as agriculture and industry, are quite vulnerable when it comes to water shortages, heat waves, droughts, and flooding. So the rising temperatures and also the unregulated harvesting impacts the health and cover of Kosovo's extensive forests, increasing forest fire incidents. When it comes to the emission data is quite limited for Kosovo, but mainly it is the Kosovo's recorded greenhouse gas emission are driven entirely by the energy sector. So climate projections are basically we have increased frequency, intensity of extreme weather events. We have decreased and less frequent precipitation and increased temperature, which means that climate change is still, and it will become more threat for most of the nations. So we have to find a way in responding to this. So it is important to start taking steps to combat climate change, to protect the environment, to push economies, to build a low carbon economy and high productivity. So Kosovo has the climate change strategy 2018-2027, which sets out the policies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adaptation to climate change. As I mentioned earlier, basically that there are many different types of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial activities that can contribute in achieving the purpose and goal of the, let's say, of the Climate Change Strategy 2018. However, entrepreneurs are confronted with many challenges to become successful. First of all, they have insufficient encouragement to undertake their role, limited incentive to work on climate action, and lack of support, including access to finance. However, these challenges are even amplified when it comes to developing countries, such as in the case of Kosovo, which often suffer from shortage of capacity, knowledge of resources to address them, and all entrepreneurs struggle to identify funding opportunities. So what could be some of the recommendations out there in responding to the, let's say, climate change strategy? I would say is raise awareness on climate change through curriculum enhancements starting from primary school. promote opportunities for entrepreneurship through targeted communication and awareness programs, build the capacity of the would-be entrepreneurs by implementing suitable education and training programs, try to offer workshops, trainings, try to talk about climate change and climate issues, design and implement policies, standards, regulations, instruments that can help, let's say, markets to create markets and provide incentives for entrepreneurship in accordance with the Climate Change Strategy 2018 2027, and mainly support young entrepreneurs on projects tackling climate change. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session, and any questions, please feel free to email me.